The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Would you have ever thought that the Commanders could go into a road game without Jaden Daniels and possibly without Terry McLaurin and still feel pretty confident they're going to win? Atlanta Falcons are a mess. Now, the line keeps moving closer and closer to the Falcons. I don't understand that. Commanders opened as 3.5-point favorites, now down to 1.5. But Jason LaCanfora has got a story today in the Post about what a mess the Falcons are. And having lived through that here for nearly a quarter of a century with the Dan Snyder regime, it's kind of refreshing to look at another team and say, yeah, been there, done that. Things aren't that way anymore. You got to feel like with Marcus Mariota likely to be the quarterback. I say likely. I don't know. We'll find out more today. Maybe find out more today. Dan Quinn is usually pretty closed-mouthed about injuries, but he did say on Monday that Jaden Daniels was day-to-day and that the fact that Marcus Mariota played so well against the Raiders would have no bearing on whether or not Daniels goes on Sunday against the Falcons. We got shut out at Carolina last week. Just a mess. So we'll look at that. But I found something heard something yesterday which would automatically make anyone think of one of the greatest sports rants ever. I believe Lee Elia had the best one with the Chicago Cubs in 1983. The late Les Grobstein had the only recording of that. No television cameras in the clubhouse that day. But Lee Elia went off on the fans of Chicago with an expletive-filled rant which lasted, 2 or 3 minutes, and included one of the great lines of ever baseball. It was he said that 85% of the world is working, the other 15% come out here to boo us. That was the days before Wrigley Field had lights, so they played all their home games in the afternoon. And he was just, it's great. And Lee Elliott just passed away within the last year, I believe. Mike Gundy did not pass away. Mike Gundy was fired yesterday as coach at Oklahoma State. He'd been on the job a long time, 20 years. And he had some great success. He had some great success when T-Bone Pickens was filling up the program with lots and lots of cash at a time when you didn't have the NIL and you didn't have the transfer portal. And Mike Gundy, who was a likable guy, he'd been a quarterback at Oklahoma State when they were really good with Barry Sanders. You probably always look good as a quarterback when you have Barry Sanders in the backfield, but he did actually leave school as the all-time leading passer in the Big Eight. That's now no longer in existence, the Big Eight, the Big 12, the Big 16, whatever it is now. But at one point, he left college football as the top conference passer of all time. Then when T-Bone Pickens put all that money in the program in the last decade, the Cowboys won the Big 12 in 2011, played in the Big 12 title game in 2021 and 2023, so they've had some recent success. He led them to 5 New Year's Day Big Six bowls in 8 10-win seasons over the 20 years that he coached. But as things changed in college football, which he was slow to embrace, remember he also had an inflated sense of himself too. I remember this in 2020 when we had the pandemic and it looked like college football was going to shut down. He declared how important he was to the state of Oklahoma and that he was going to have a football season anyway. And ultimately they had a shortened season. It didn't count for the players, and they kind of got through it and got some TV money out of it. But when the transfer portal and the NIL became commonplace in college football, he was behind, and he lost 11 of his last 12 games, including a game where he played Oregon a couple of weeks ago, and he was whining about the fact that Oregon had all this Nike money and it was unfair, yada, yada, yada. He didn't say anything when T-Bone Pickens was filling up the program with cash, but they lost this game 69-3, and then they lost at home to Tulsa over the weekend for the first time since 1951. Wow, 1951. The buyout's only $15 million. And what they did was they restructured his contract at the end of last season specifically for this. Like, okay, you want to stay, and we'll give you X amount of dollars, but we're going to significantly reduce the buyout, which is what they did. So no big deal for some booster at Oklahoma State to write a $15 million check to Mike Gundy. But his fame traces back 18 years ago. He's now 58 years old. But this was a rant that he had in 2007 when he was, he didn't have the mullet. He looked very young, and he was 40 years old, leading to the most quoted line of the rant, "I'm a man, I'm 40." But it had to do with a quarterback controversy. Now, they're coming off a win. They beat Texas Tech, September 22nd, 2007. So it's almost exactly 18 years ago. They won the game 49-45. And instead of coming into the news conference afterwards with a big smile on his face, he was angry. And he had a copy of the Oklahoman, the daily newspaper in Oklahoma City. And he was upset about a column written by Jenny Carlson, who explained that the Cowboys had benched quarterback Bobby Reed in favor of Zach Robinson. And in the editorial, in the column, she reported that Reed had previously considered transferring from the program and detailed how he often handled his nerves poorly heading into games and questioned his attitude and toughness. She wrote, "Reed is the most talented quarterback in Payne County, but he hasn't proven that he's the toughest. If you listen to the rumblings and the rumors, Cowboy coaches simply grew weary of it. Who knows? There might come a day where they grow tired of something that Robinson does, Zach Robinson, but for now they appear to be willing to sacrifice a bit of talent for a lot of grit." Well, Mike Gundy did not like that, and as he held up the Daily Oklahoma newspaper, he looked directly at Jenny Carlson and went off for about 3 minutes.
If anybody hasn't read this article, I don't read it. This was brought to me by a mother of children. I think this is worth reading. And let me tell you why I'm talking about this article. 3/4 of this is inaccurate. It's fiction. And this article embarrasses me to be involved with athletics tremendously. And that article had to have been written by a person that doesn't have a child and has never had a child that's had their heart broken and come home upset and had to deal with the child when he is upset and kick a person when he's down. Here's all that kid did. He goes to class. He's respectful to the media. He's respectful to the public. And he's a good kid. And he's not a professional athlete. And he doesn't deserve to be kicked when he's down. If you have a child someday, you'll understand how it feels. But you obviously don't have a child. I do. If your child goes down the street and somebody makes fun of him because he dropped a pass in a pickup game or says he's fat and he comes home crying to his mom, you'd understand. But you haven't had that. But someday you will. And when your child comes home, you'll understand. If you want to go after an athlete, one of my athletes, you go after one that doesn't do the right things. You don't downgrade him because he does everything right and may not play as well on Saturday. And you let us make that decision. That's why I don't read the newspaper. Because it's garbage. And the editor that let it come out is garbage. Attacking an amateur athlete for doing everything right. And then you want to write articles about guys that don't do things right and downgrade them, the ones that do make plays. Are you kidding me? Where are we at in society today? Come after me. I'm a man. I'm 40. I'm not a kid. Write something about me or our coaches. Don't write about a kid that does everything right, that's heart's broken, and then say that the coaches said he was scared. That ain't true. And then to say that we made that decision because Donovan Woods, because he threatened to transfer, that's not true. So get your facts straight And I hope someday you have a child and somebody downgrades them and belittles them, and you have to look them in the eye and say, you know what? It's okay. They're supposed to be mature adults, but they're really not. Who's the kid here? Who's the kid here? Are you kidding me? And that's all I got to say. Makes me want to puke.
And then he left. Didn't discuss anything about this thrilling win over Texas Tech 18 years ago on Monday. 18 years ago was the anniversary of this. The epilogue to this was the quarterback change was the right change. Zach Robinson went on to play really well for the Cowboys the next 2 years, threw for over 8,000 yards, 66 touchdowns, and they went 9-4 in 2008 and 2009. As far as Reed, the quarterback who was benched, that essentially ended his career. He never played again. Bobby Reed never played again at Oklahoma State or anywhere else. And when contacted by ESPN about 7 months after the rant, Reed told ESPN that the rant basically ended his life. I don't think it was that serious, but it certainly did end his college football career. He did have eligibility remaining. In those days, you had to sit out a season if you transferred someplace else. So maybe he didn't want to go through 2 more years of that, and the possibility that he might not play after a redshirt year, who knows? But, I mean, you think about a 20-year career at the same school, you would normally be remembered for the players you produced, the wins that you had, the seasons that you had, and they were a really good team when T. Boone Pickens was funding the program. But you got to adapt, and Mike Gundy was slow to adapt. We're seeing the same thing with Dabo Swinney. You have to get up with the times or get out. And Nick Saban, who was in his 70s, still at the top of his game. I mean, he retired after he took his team to the semifinals of the playoff. He said, no, this is not what I signed up for. I'm getting out. I think in the old system, Nick Saban would still be coaching. Yeah, he looks great, sounds great. He's great on TV. I'm sure he misses a lot of the things about college football, but not everything. And with Mike Gundy, while he thrived in an era where he had kind of an advantage because of extra cash in the program, where you could entice players with plush towels in the locker room and a really nice stadium and all the accoutrements that go with it. But nowadays, that doesn't mean anything. How much are you going to pay me? Where's the money coming from? And if you're not willing to get on board with that, get out. Now, he's only 58 years old. That's the other thing with Swinney. Swinney's 55. These are men in their coaching prime. They should be able to go another 15 years apiece. But, I don't know. Would you now hire Mike Gundy, who lost 11 of his last 12 games at a program that was in the rankings for a long period of time in the old system, knowing that there's a new system here? And look, I can tell you as someone who's almost a decade older, you don't want to change. The things that you have done through your life, which have put you in the position where you are, you generally don't want to change them because you're comfortable where you are. I don't know how many guys in their late 50s have a hunger to change the way they do business. Dabo Swinney can talk about, well, I'm just getting started here as a coach. I finally figured it out. Well, no, you haven't. You just lost at home badly to Syracuse, and your team is 1-3. It doesn't work that way, and we all are like this. We are creatures of habit. We develop something that works for us, and if somebody says, oh, no, that doesn't work anymore, you have to completely change. We're not anxious to do that. I mean, I look at Tony Kornheiser, who's 77 years old, and he just signed up for 3 more years at ESPN. But he's been strong enough in the way he, handles himself and the way he stands up to management. But he's always had, leverage to do that. He had multiple jobs for a long time, still does. I mean, he still does the podcast. He doesn't need money. But what he does is he says to management, look, this is what I like to do. I like doing it this way. You want me to do it that way. I don't want to do it. And they cave. They say, okay, well, we're because they, there was talk about making PTI an hour. And he didn't want to do it. I don't know where Wilbon stood on that, but Tony he didn't have to tell anybody behind the scenes because he was saying it on the air. This is too damn long. We're not doing an hour. And so he manages to move on and do things the way that he wants to do them and has always done them to an extent. I mean, people have to change, obviously, with some things that come along. But by and large, he's the same Tony that I started working with in 1992, and it's worked out very well for him. Mike Gundy, it was working out really well for him 15 years ago, 12 years ago, 10 years ago. But in 2025, it's not working. And they said in letting him go, they did it for the long-term good of the program. Well, that means that they had no faith that a man who is 58 years old, very much the prime of his working life, they had no faith that he could turn this around. They said for the long term, this is what we have to do. So, times are a-changing. And we'll get to Mike Locksley in a little bit. I pulled some of his news conference from this week. Very quietly, Mike Locksley has gone against the grain, where everybody has gone to the transfer portal, and he's brought in some transfers. But he went back to the high school roots, and he's winning now with a true freshman quarterback who looks great, and a bunch of guys on defense who are true freshmen as well. And so when other coaches were looking at high schools and thinking, I can get ready-made players in the portal, he said, well, if you're not going to take them, like he talked about a couple of guys who had offers from Ohio State. If you go to Ohio State now as a high schooler, you're going to sit because you're going to be sitting behind guys who've been playing college football for 3 and sometimes 4 years. And you're not going to be as ready for that level as they are. Whereas Locksley is able to say at Maryland, well, come on over here, and we're going to give you playing time. We got playing time open. If you're good enough to win a job, we're going to play you because I haven't brought in a transfer and promised him a starting job. So far so good. It's only 4 games. It's a 12-game season, only a third over, and they've played the easiest part prior to the Wisconsin game. It's going to get a lot tougher now with Washington and Nebraska. They've got Indiana down the road. But, this has been a pretty remarkable turnaround, doing it the way that nobody's doing it these days. Everybody's doing it with the transfer portal. Mike Locksley, who's always been a good recruiter, especially at the high school level, has got a program now that, at least for now, things can change in a month, but at least for now is being looked at and, whoa, look at that. They're leading the country in turnovers created, by the way. And they have looked very impressive, not just in beating non-conference opponents, but the way they went into Madison last weekend and beat up on Wisconsin. We'll get to his comments next, and plus we'll look at what was said by Jason Lockenfora in his story about the Atlanta Falcons. That and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So if you remember back to the days of Kirk Cousins and RG3 and Colt McCoy was here as well. And many times the quarterback situation was a mess. And it was a mess because the owner fell in love with RG3 off the first year that he had, and Griffin had an amazing rookie year. You can't do much better than he did. He threw 20 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions, ran for 850 yards, and took a team that started 3-6 to the playoffs. I mean, that was a remarkable year. But things fell off after that. It was falling out with the coach, and the coach undermined by the owner, and on and on and on and on. And it was just such a mess with the quarterbacks. Well, now, we've had 2 quarterbacks play in the 3 games this year, but there's no problem. I mean, everybody likes Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota likes Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels likes Mariota. They all like the coach. Everybody's happy. It's just so different. And so as they get ready to play the Atlanta Falcons, you're looking at a team that's a mess, particularly at quarterback. They were shut out. Shut out. It's hard to get shut out in the NFL. It doesn't happen that often because along the way, you're going to kick a field goal. I mean, coaches will kick field goals late in blowouts just to avoid a shutout. They didn't get to do that. They lost the game 30-0. And Michael Penix started, wasn't good, obviously. They went to Kirk Cousins, who is there because he has to be there. He doesn't want to be there. He signed the big free agent contract before last season, got benched for Penix. Penix played well enough that he was the starter going into the season, and the Falcons are not going to cut Cousins and eat the money. They're not going to trade him and eat most of the money, and their position is, well, we like Penix, but if he gets hurt, we got a quality backup here. So until somebody blows our doors off with an offer, we're going to keep him. So they did bench Penix at the end of the game on Sunday, but it was only because they said the game was a blowout, and the coach is going to stick with Penix for this game against the Commanders on Sunday. There's also an issue, according to Jason Lockenforer, with offensive coordinator Zach Robinson. We were just talking about him. He was the quarterback at Oklahoma State 15 years ago. Anyway, this is what Lockenforer writes. To say that the relations are strained between Penix and Cousins, the veteran who signed a hefty free agent deal in 2024, only to be usurped by the Falcons drafting Penix, is a gross understatement. Rumblings around the NFL about this being a compromise coupling only resonated more loudly as Sunday's ugly defeat played out. Call it puzzling at best that Cousins came in cold to complete 5 of 7 passes. Robinson didn't call a passing play the rest of the afternoon. In other words, Penix wasn't good. Cousins comes in cold, 5 of 7. Ooh, we can't have this on tape, so let's not call a pass the rest of the game, even though they're down 30-0. Unlikely you're going to come back, but not impossible. Robinson didn't call a passing play rest of the afternoon. More from Lockenforer. It's certainly a bit troubling that Penix, selected 8th in 2024, does not look more at ease yet, despite getting all the reps as the unquestioned starter since Cousins was benched last season. Perhaps Robinson, another one of Los Angeles Rams coach Sean McVay's former assistants, is a significant part of the problem. This situation merits serious monitoring if Penix cannot get it going in the next few weeks. Quote, Zach will do whatever he can to avoid letting Cousins play, said one executive with ties to McVay, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the coach-quarterback relationship. They can't have a quarterback controversy. Right. You can't have Michael Penix looking over his shoulder all the time and wondering when Kirk Cousins is going to go into the game. But this early in the season, you still got to be thinking about postseason, don't you? I mean, they almost got there last year. If they'd have beaten the Commanders here in that second-to-last game of the season, they would have been a playoff team. More from Lockenforer. Falcons ownership was not willing to eat enough of Cousins' contract this offseason to facilitate a trade, according to multiple NFL executives, including some who had at least modest interest in the quarterback. Cousins' relationship with the Atlanta coaching staff has soured after he struggled mightily in 2024 coming back from an Achilles injury. He never seemed a fit physically or schematically in Robinson's offense, and the two never quite clicked personally. Quote, I don't think they're really getting along, said another executive who spoke on the condition of anonymity to freely discuss interpersonal issues on another's roster. Regardless of the politics between coach and quarterback, the Falcons staff still deemed Week 3 an appropriate moment to thrust Cousins into garbage time. Yeah, they could have avoided that, but they put him in there. I don't think it was necessarily just to avoid an injury to Michael Penix. I don't think so. Here's more. Penix is completing just 58.6% of his passes. Despite this being a very truncated attack, they're only averaging 6.1 yards an attempt. He's failed to reach 175 yards passing in the last 2 games. That's really a low number in the NFL, less than 200 yards in 2 consecutive games. A few more Penix clunkers, and there could be mounting calls for Cousins. As crazy as that seems after so many Falcons fans were clamoring for him to be dealt this offseason. Calls for a new coach might not be far behind. For his part, Robinson will be in no hurry to go back to the veteran no matter how dire things get, and the outcome might not bring out the best in either of them. So they appear to be a mess. And the Commanders, whether it's going to be Marcus Mariota or Jaden Daniels, I think you have to feel pretty good at this point. Anything can happen in the NFL. It's a week-to-week league, and bad teams beat good teams. And look, last week, the Cleveland Browns were down 10-0 with 4 minutes to go against the Packers, who were being considered for status as the next undefeated team. The last to do it, of course, the Patriots, who in 2007 went undefeated, and they came back and won the game on a field goal at the end of the game. So, things can change. But that's where things are now in Atlanta. And when they looked at the quarterback situation at the beginning of the year, they probably said to themselves, well, we got a really good young one here in Michael Penix, and he'll be our starter. And just in case he's injured, we can throw in this savvy veteran who's taken teams to playoffs before, and we'll be fine. Well, they're not fine. And you've got this drama going on, according to La Canfora, between offensive coordinator and quarterback who doesn't want to be there, and your starter who you've anointed the guy isn't the guy right now, completing less than 60% of his passes. That is a mess. All right, back to college football. I was talking about Mike Locksley, if you're just jumping in your car. Locksley has been under fire, and I have defended him. People calling for his head last year when the team won only 4 games and, said things in the news conference, the media day for the Big Ten that you would not have expected. You don't hear a coach say, I lost the locker room. But that's what he said. And he lost it, he said, basically because of NIL. And he's got a sign up outside the locker now. Check your car keys, your Louis bags, meaning your Louis Vuitton bags, and essentially your ego at the door or your checkbook. We had players feuding about who was making more money. And what he's done, he's got some transfers. Everybody's got to have transfers now. You have to have that. But he's also loaded up on freshmen. And he hit the jackpot, it looks like, at quarterback with Malik Washington, who's having a hell of a year. Now, 3 of them are non-conference opponents, but he looked awfully good against Wisconsin last week. He has thrown for 8 touchdowns, only 1 interception, and over 1,000 yards. And he's been key to their success, but the defense has been great as well. Defense leading the nation in turnovers. And he's already matched last year's win total at 4-0. And he was asked it's kind of an off-week news conference because they got a bye. They play Washington a week from Saturday at home. This Locksley asked about how his team is handling this success.
How we manage success is as important as how we manage adversity. And, the only way we know how to do it is based on our standards, the things that they said that they wanted as a team. And if we focus more on the standard and less on the outcomes, that's how you do it, and that's how you prevent, guys from. And I'm sure, as a coach, I've gotten a million text messages about congrats, big win, and so I can only imagine what those guys are getting. And this is where for us, we've got to do a great job as coaches and managing that. The expectations are still internal; they aren't external. We've created the standard in which we know. We always say, how do you create repeated success? Well, it's through the process that you create, and that's where the standard that these players have created leads the charge for us to do that. And so it's really important that we do manage some of the early success we have, but I can tell you that we show them every time. Every game, there's a bunch of things to get cleaned up with this team. And so as long as we focus on the technical, the fundamental development piece, I think it's easy to keep them locked in on doing things and approaching it with the same intentionality.
Now, they have not reached the level that he talked about going into last year about competing for Big Ten titles. They're a long way away from that. But my feeling about Maryland football has always been, if you win between 7 and 9 games a year, that's a great year. That to me is, he can talk about the standard, and he should, and he's got to sell that to his players. He's got to sell that to the fan base. But unless things change dramatically in College Park, it's a basketball school, and football is, I enjoy it. I'm a season ticket holder. I like the tailgating. I like the whole atmosphere. I like going to the games. But it's not going to be Penn State. It's just not going to be. But, again, to have a successful season for Maryland is to get to a bowl game and win a bowl game, which he did for 3 straight years. He's also had other 4-0 starts. He's had 2 others in the last 4 years, one in 2021 and one in 2023. And as we say every year at Passover, Manishtana Halayla Hazeh, why is this year different than all other years? This was Locksley on that yesterday.
I would say this one feels different because of the veteran players we have, but then the talent level. I mean, I've never played this many true freshmen, I don't think. If you just look at how young and inexperienced we were as the season started, I would say that the focus that we went into of building through the high school and not necessarily just kind of what most people have done the last few years, portaling, has paid off, because to land guys like Zaire, Mathis, and we've got DeJuan Williams out of the high school ranks, and he was committed, I think, to Ohio State at one point. A lot of these players were heavily recruited. The Jalen Gilchrist guys, these guys were guys that had the ability to come in and help us early, and we recognize that. So very fortunate that we hit on the evaluations of these guys, but I'd say that it feels a little bit different because of the level in which these guys have been able to come in, probably a little more ready than most of the freshmen that we've had to play over the years. We played a bunch of freshmen a year ago in the secondary, and it didn't work very well for us. But I think with this group, these guys have met the challenges and have allowed us. That's probably why it feels a little differently than it has in the past.
So he's admitting to some luck there. They don't know when a player makes the transition from high school to college how it's going to go. So they worked out well with that. But he's hit a grand slam when it comes to that with Malik Washington. We'd heard a lot about him. He was one of the top quarterback recruits in the country. He's got the size. He's 6'5". He can run a little bit. He's not the fastest guy, but he can run, and he's got a pro arm. He looks like the goods. And this is Loxley on the transition that Malik Washington has made from high school to college in this short period of time.
I would say the maturity piece, how he elevated the Spalding program, we're starting to see that here. He went into Spalding before Spalding was a program that had great success, and it was because of how he played and obviously bringing in people with him. People want to play with him. And so to see the maturity that he's shown, but also how he elevates the people around him has been really consistent and throughout his career in high school and now. And then as a passer, I think what's happened now is, the understanding of coverages, the pre-snap decisions of being able to, a lot like the SAT, where you need to be able to eliminate what's not the answer as quickly as possible and limit what the answer can be. And I think Pep and Ted and our offensive staff has done a really good job of how we've kind of gotten him going and how we've taught him to process things before the ball is snapped. And to me, that helps and allows him to align himself. And then the other piece is, very rarely do you see Malik make the same mistake. I'll give an example. He missed the post earlier in the game to 84 to Caleb Webb. And, he needs to throw him a little further open or away from the defender, needs to put a little more air under the ball. And the next one he hit was the one to punch in a critical point in the game where he made the adjustment and made the correction, which a lot like all these other kids on our team, when we've made emphasis on things, we've been able to achieve them. And I saw him do that in game. So I was really pleased with seeing him be able to self-correct.
Now, if this continues, if he has a spectacular year at quarterback, if he plays at the same level that he has in the first 4 games, this is going to be an interesting test for the new athletic director, Jim Smith. Jim Smith worked at Ohio State. He comes to Maryland having worked for the Atlanta Braves. It's about the money. He's tasked with getting more people into the stadium on Saturday. I'm sure they'll have a good crowd for this 3:30 game against Washington off this start. But he's got to beef things up, and he knows it. And keeping a quarterback like this who has 2 years of eligibility is going to be a very, very interesting test for him, because if he's this good, you're going to see schools with offers, and you hear these numbers, they're crazy. But I think Tulane did this with a Duke quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. They gave him a 2-year deal for like $6 million or $8 million, something crazy like that. Can Maryland pay that money to keep Malik Washington? We'll see. But he will have 2 years of eligibility left after this year. And somebody, or 3 years left, but more likely if he's this good, he'll go to the pros after the 3-year minimum that you have to do in college. Will they be able to keep him? It's a problem for down the road. If you got a 9-win season this year, you go, hey, we'll take that. Thank you very much. But if they do want to keep him and continue to build the program and charge more money to people like me for season tickets, then, it's going to be a show me the money situation. And this is so unlike the NFL. It'd be like Jaden Daniels has a great rookie year with Washington. and he's making whatever he makes. You know, he's still on a rookie contract, so we got the $25 million bonus for whatever he makes. And another team would be able to say, hey, Jaden, we really want you. We're going to pay you $30 million or $50 million, whatever it is, to come here. And he could go. That's the state of college football. That's why they're going to have contracts. And that's why when the next Malik Washington comes along, he will have to have a 2-year contract. And if he wants to leave, then there's a buyout. And there's a buyout number like coaches. That's the way that has to work. Again, I'm getting way ahead of myself, but so far so good with Malik Washington at Maryland. This was funny, and I like him very much. I know he wasn't good here as a head coach. Steve Spurrier won 7 games his first year and went 5-11. Not too good his last year. Never coached in the pros again. But as a college coach, he was great. He was a great coach at Florida. He did really well at South Carolina, and he knows how to really tweak people. But he also is a traditionalist for college football. And he is lamenting the fact that the SEC, because of expansion, is doing away with the annual rivalry game between Tennessee and Florida. And if you remember the 90s, the late 90s, with Peyton Manning was the best quarterback, maybe one of the best ever in college, 4-year starter at Tennessee, went 0-4 against Florida. That's what prevented him from winning a national title, and that's what probably prevented him from winning a Heisman Trophy. But according to this new schedule, the way they worked it out, Florida and Tennessee won't be playing every year. They'll be playing in 2026. They won't play next year, and they won't play in 2028. So it's going to be alternating years. Spurrier's 80 years old now. He says nowadays they don't care about rivalries that much, I don't think. And he's right. And he has some allegiance to Tennessee because he grew up in Johnson City, Tennessee, even though he went to Florida and won the Heisman Trophy there. But he is right about this, and I think he's right about the fact that they don't care. And I remember when Maryland left the ACC, and we all loved the days of the Duke rivalry and the North Carolina rivalry where they played home and home every year. By the time it was time to make the move to the Big Ten from the ACC, and they did it for money, that was gone. They weren't playing Duke home and home every year. They weren't playing North Carolina home and home. They had the conference had established Pitt as their rival. Please, so this is what you give up in all this expansion and all this money grab. And Spurrier, who's even older than I am, can have this opinion, and I agree with it. But again, there's nothing they can do about it. The one thing is that, and I say this often about the college football product, it's still really good. I mean, you can complain all you want about the NIL and the transfer portal, but when you watch a game on Saturday, like the game a couple of weeks ago, where Tennessee and Georgia had a classic at Tennessee with Georgia winning that game in overtime, that was great entertainment. Great entertainment. So things change. You got to adapt. And while Spurrier is right, you do miss those big rivals. You just do. And it is a shame that Tennessee and Florida are not going to play every year. But that's the progress. That's where the money is. And as they always say, follow the money. Coming up in the next hour, we'll do Orioles preview. We'll talk to one of their analysts, Ben McDonald, who was a great pitcher with them back in the 90s. And we'll also take a look at what is happening with a special that will air tonight on ESPN about Lane Kiffin. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. You just never know how a baseball season is going to go. Here you had the Orioles, back-to-back years, making the playoffs, didn't win a playoff game, but this year they're going to step up. They got new ownership. The young players are experienced, having gone to the playoffs. Well, they're not getting back to the playoffs, and they need to win their remaining 5 games just to finish 500. Talked to Ben McDonald at 10:45. He was a pitcher for the Orioles. Joined the team during that season in 1989 when they were the Why Not Us Orioles. They'd lost 107 games the year before and went into the last weekend of the season with a chance to be in the postseason. This year kind of went the opposite way, and we'll try to figure that out in Orioles preview and more as we roll towards 11 o'clock. And Bram Weinstein. So yesterday, John Harbaugh was on the Dan Patrick Show. John Harbaugh seems willing to do interviews, but he's really weird. He's just got a weird way about him. He really does. And there's no question he's a great coach. He's won a national championship in college, and the missing thing is an NFL championship. Now, he can't go back to college because he cheated, and he'd have to do a show cause and all. They don't care about that anymore. He must be close to 60 now. He probably is 60. And so he wants to win one, and he comes back to the NFL where they have a quarterback. And he doesn't have problems that other people have. The Giants have problems. They have already made a quarterback change. They have benched Russell Wilson after an 0-3 start, though their defense has been putrid. They've given up the most points in the league. And they are going with Jackson Dart in Sunday's game against the Chargers, which is a home game. Meantime, here's old Jim Harbaugh sitting there going, I'm in pretty good shape with my quarterback. I got a guy who's one of those guys, and I am quite pleased with Justin Herbert.
People ask me, what's he improved on this year? He's just always been great since I've been here day one. It's like watching greatness every single day. What has he improved on? He did get a mile an hour faster this off season. We previously had clocked him on the GPS at 20.7 miles per hour. And then in training camp, he took off, ran, and we got him at 21.6 miles an hour. So almost a full second faster. And he works on it every day. His training is elite. He's conditioning. It's speed training, and he has gotten faster. And it's showing up in the games.
When did you realize there was unfinished business in the NFL?
When I walked off the field at the Super Bowl in 2013, I was really proud of our team and what they did to get there and how they played in the game, and felt like there'll be another day. Almost like who was the actor in Field of Dreams? Burt Lancaster, when he said he got his one at bat in the major leagues, and he walked off the field and thought there would be other days, but then there weren't any other days. I thought there would be other days, and then for a long time that there wasn't any other days, and now with the Chargers, with a team that has the license and the ability to do it, I'm feeling that there's going to be another day.
Well, he's got the quarterback to do it. If you want to get that comparison, you got to get it right. He was talking about Burt Lancaster, who played actually a real-life person. There actually is a Moonlight Graham, who actually was I think he was a pre-med student at the University of Maryland, played baseball at Maryland, got one appearance in the major leagues with the New York Giants, like 1913, 1914, and he played a half inning in the outfield, didn't get any chances out there. And when his team came to bat in the bottom of the ninth, his turn in the order never came up. Season ended, last game of the season, and he never appeared again in the major leagues. Played some minor league baseball, but never got his shot again. So he did have an appearance in a game. He's in the baseball encyclopedia, but he does not have an official at bat. And that was what Field of Dreams was all about with Burt Lancaster playing Moonlight Graham, that his opportunity in the majors never came, and maybe it could have come in the Iowa cornfield, and he was set to do that, to get his at-bat in the major leagues, and then steps over the line that separated the players from the bygone era, the shoeless Joe Jacksons and so forth, and into the modern times to save the daughter of Kevin Costner, who was choking, and his opportunity never came. That's a lot about life, that you have sometimes things that you dream about finally getting a chance to do, and they never come. So anyway, but if you're going to make that comparison, make sure you get it right. Moonlight Graham did not get his at-bat in the major leagues, and that's what he was searching for. And that's when he said there will be other days, and there were not other days. Okay, enough on that. Back to real NFL. And yesterday, Jeff Saturday was on PTI, and he's always a very good guest. And they had him on to talk about the Ravens, but not necessarily the failings of the defense, which got run over for 224 yards by the Lions, but the fact that one of the best running backs in football, probably a future Hall of Famer, Derrick Henry, has gotten fumbleitis, and for the third straight game had a key fumble in this loss on Monday night.
We're going to talk about Derrick Henry. He's a great running back. There's no question about that. He's now fumbled 3 times already this year. He's lost 2 of them. As an offensive lineman, okay, I know you like to run the ball. Everybody in the offensive line would rather go forward than go backwards. But do doubts ever creep in, even with someone as great as Derrick Henry?
They really don't, Tony. And the truth is, what you're more concerned with is that the doubts creep in to his head. Because as an offensive lineman, you have this trust and this implicit trust in the guys that are going to run the ball. You're going to go put hat on hat. You're going to knock guys down. He's going to go make that explosive play like he made in the first quarter where he bounces it and takes it for 25 or whatever it was for a touchdown. So every time you put the ball in his hand, you're expecting an explosive play. Unfortunately, the last couple weeks, it's been disastrous, right? The one against Buffalo and then the one last night. And you can see, like, the weight on him, and you can feel how disappointed he is in himself for what's going on. But as an offensive lineman, when you got a guy like Henry, a Hall of Famer, the guy is a freight train. He's a bring-your-own blocker. You love fighting for guys like that. You want to fight with him to get through this and look back on this as you're trying to ascend to the Super Bowl at the end of the year and go, man, you remember how bad we felt after week 3 and put this thing behind you.
Well, I know how much everybody in the industry hates injuries, Jeff, but the one guy people will not have to fight with anymore the rest of this season is Nick Bosa, who's out for the season now. What does that do for the offensive linemen as they face the 49ers and they don't have him specifically bearing down on them?
Yeah, so as an offensive lineman, you have pass rushers, tough ones, and you got closers. And Bosa is in the closer category, right? Game on the line, 3rd and 4 plus. Everybody in the building knows you got to throw it or you're going to throw it, and he's on the edge. You are moving around. You want to find him, right? Because he's the guy who's going to make the play. He's going to spin inside. He's going to hand slap you. He's going to work the edge. He's going to fight through you. He's going to be relentless in his rush. Strip sacks, all those kinds of things that kind of come to mind. Guys like that are difference makers in the NFL. There are a lot of really good pass rushers, but guys who close in those moments, which is the category I would put Bosa in, it is a sigh of relief. For offensive linemen, because those are the ones we put our antennas up, right? You track them, you find them. As a center, as you're calling protections, you're always looking to see where he's lined up. Is he coupled with somebody that he loves to run games with? There's a litany of things that you're thinking about when there's that kind of guy. It's a massive loss out in San Fran. You hate to see it for anybody, but the Niners have had a ton of injuries early, and that one's a big one because, again, as you get to the games that matter, you want guys like that lined up to close games out.
We're going to stay with offensive line for one more question, Jeff. The Houston Texans, 0-3 now, spent their offseason trying to fix, build up, figure out what was up with their offensive line. I guess they came into the season thinking they had done it, and they haven't. What's the problem there? It sounds like more than one.
So I'm going to say it this way. This is when the idea of just players are going to fix a problem, right? This particular player is not going to be good, so we're going to replace him with someone else. The organization as a whole or the team as a whole has not done a good job of placing protection at the forefront. And Stroud is an absolute stud. I have a ton of respect for this kid. But he gets hit a ton. And I don't care how strong you are, how big you are. When you start getting hit, you start making bad decisions because bad things creep in your mind. Your feet move, your eyes drop down. There's a number of different things that happen to quarterbacks. This has to be a let's fix it with scheme as much as we're trying to fix it with just players. So whether you got to keep tight ends in, you got to keep backs out, you're going to have fewer guys in the route. And again, part of this is, running back was hurt. Mixon's hurt. So the run game isn't as good. Collins is there, but he's really your only threat. So there's not a lot of fear being struck in the defense anyway. So how can we manufacture? But I would tell you this. Every pass play that I ever ran with Peyton Manning as my quarterback was a protection-first play. And you want to figure, how do we protect it and allow him to figure it out? Right now, Stroud has taken way too many hits, and it's trickling down into his performance and the offense as a whole.
Thank you for mentioning you and Peyton Manning. It gets me to the next question. You're great talking about other teams, but now we're going to talk about your team. You played for the Colts. You coached the Colts. The Colts are now a surprising 3-0. What are you seeing that's making them successful? Nobody figured 3-0. And is it sustainable?
Well, it is sustainable. And I will tell you, Warren, the addition of Warren offensively, the tight end who they drafted, early in the draft, has been phenomenal. The first game we were there for the Jim Irsay Ring of Honor induction, I think he caught the first 4 passes that Daniel Jones threw. Shane Steichen has done a fantastic job of getting him comfortable. Jonathan Taylor is on a blazing pace. Their running back, he's running wild. Their receivers are making big plays. Daniel Jones is averaging 9 yards a completion, 72%, I think, completion rate. Like, it's absurd. But this team can do it because at every position, they're good. So at some positions they're great, but they're good at almost every position, from offensive line, receivers, tight end, running back. When you have that, and Daniel Jones is executing at a high level, it is sustainable. Their defense is doing their job, keeping this thing happening. The Denver thing is missed field goal, penalty, all that kind of stuff. That happens in the NFL. But this team, it will be one to face come playoff time because everybody will be nervous. Daniel Jones continues to keep playing the way he is.
That is Jeff Saturday, and sometimes it's just where you are. Daniel Jones washing out in New York, though he did get the contract extension, but then once he got it, didn't perform. Now he's with a team that maybe has the right people around him. It's just crazy the way that works. About the Sunday night game. This is something that has been hyped since the start of the season when Micah Parsons got traded to the Packers, that Green Bay is going to be at Dallas. Micah Parsons back in his old house. There was some discussion about, whether there should be a video tribute. No, he only played 4 years with the Cowboys. I don't blame Jerry Jones for that. But Jerry on his radio show is trying to push the idea that the team is going to be a little bit more motivated to beat Micah Parsons. He says, I've said this time and time again, I think the world of Micah as an individual, and of course I know him well. I might say I wish him well, except it's obvious I don't this weekend in terms of Green Bay winning the game, and that's what makes for an exciting time. And he's indicating that the team will play harder to beat him. They may also be looking at this like, Jerry, you screwed us. You gave up one of the best players on defense in the NFL. We could have really used him, and these draft picks right now aren't doing us a lot of good. More from Jerry, he said yesterday. Over the years, when I saw Micah mitigated, I saw teams play him pretty well. When he's going to make some plays, no matter how well you play him. But I saw people play well with us, with Micah in the game, and it didn't happen. Then obviously we'll be looking to try and run those kinds of plays, whatever that means. So Jerry expects more from his team this week with Micah Parsons coming to town with the Green Bay Packers. This was Ryan McGee yesterday on our morning show on Sportsmanlike. He has done a lot of different college football coverage for ESPN. He was also involved in NASCAR. He's quite good at what he does. And he's produced a E60, an E60, I should say, more grammatically correct, which is going to run tonight at 7 o'clock on ESPN. And it's about Lane Kiffin. And it's called The Many Lives of Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin, if you remember, got a really early start at the top of coaching. He was the coach of the Raiders when Al Davis owned the team. And they drafted Jamarcus Russell. Al made that choice because Jamarcus Russell had a rocket arm, but became probably the biggest bust in NFL history. He ate himself out of the league, didn't study his playbook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Lane Kiffin had to go before they were able to give up on Jamarcus Russell. And remember, Al did this 1 hour overhead projector. Remember the overhead projectors we used to have in school that projected the image on a screen? He did a 1 hour overhead projection news conference, ripping Lane Kiffin, just trashing him. And Kiffin went back down. I think he coached at South Florida. He made his way back to Tennessee, and now he's the coach at Ole Miss. So this is McGee explaining exactly the route that he took and compared it to a legendary actor and filmmaker.
Orson Welles, right? He made Citizen Kane when he was like 23 years old, and the end of his career was making coffee maker commercials, right? So, yeah, I totally get what you're saying. But no, I'm fascinated by Lane. I've been around Lane since we were kids. When his dad, Monty, inventor of the Tampa 2 defense, was the only time that Monty was a head coach. Was at North Carolina State in the early 80s, and my dad was an ACC referee. So he would take my brother and I over to NC State practices and scrimmages, and there was this one little punk kid, like 6 years old. I would play football with the coaches' kids, and he's calling like DPIs and holding. And then 20 years later, my brother calls, I think that little mouthy kid from State just got the Raiders job. And so I've been around him forever, right? But what's interesting is, and I think people will see this in the documentary, and his dad is a huge part of this E60 special, is it's okay to evolve, right? It's okay to grow. And the question is, do you learn from what you've done or didn't do in the past? And I think that he has, and I believe him when he says it. There's going to be a lot of people that don't because he's him. But this is the only time I know of that he goes station to station, from Fresno State to USC to the Raiders to the Tennessee mess to FAU to all of it. And I think people are going to be fascinated by it. I'm not an idiot. People who don't like Lane Kiffin aren't suddenly going to just love him, but I think they'll at least understand him a little better.
Monster game for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels this weekend against LSU down in Mississippi. I'm curious to know who needs this more. Is it Lane or is it Brian Kelly?
Well, I don't believe that Lane Kiffin's job is in jeopardy. I think he can stay in Oxford as long as he wants. I think Brian Kelly is walking a thin sheet of ice every single day in Baton Rouge. Wow. And, step by step, Brian Kelly's kind of getting through things. Like, I'll give Marty Smith credit. On Marty McGee all summer, he's like, LSU's a national championship contender. I'm like, dude, they got to win week 1 first. They haven't done that in 5 years, and they did that. And now their offense isn't what it should be. Well, it's getting there. So Brian Kelly right now is just talking about station to station. That's what he's doing. I think he needs to win more than Kiffin does because people saw this year as a transitional year for Ole Miss anyway with Jackson Dart being gone. Ole Miss is ahead of schedule. LSU right now is right where people thought they should be.
Ryan, I want to go back to the many lives of Lane Kiffin because you speak to some incredible people as part of this documentary. Nick Saban, Steve Sarkisian, Pete Carroll. What's something that you learned about Lane Kiffin and speaking with those people about him that surprised you, that you didn't know prior to this?
I think that he is super underrated as a coach. What he has done at Ole Miss, Ole Miss is a great place, and we all know about Archie Manning and maybe Johnny Vaught back in the 60s and all that stuff. But you go in their stadium, which is one of the great venues, one of the great parties in all of sports, and there's not many years up on the wall, right, for championships and Divisions I. I mean, there aren't any really since the 60s. And what he has done in his time there, winning double-digit games every year and being in the CFP conversation and being in the SEC championship conversation, they haven't done those things yet, but they're getting close, putting guys in the first round of the draft every single year. That's the part that I've always understood that he's a good football coach. But when Nick Saban and Pete Carroll and these people sit there and say, you don't understand how smart he is X's and O's wise, if he could just figure out the other stuff, then he could be a great coach, and he's figuring out the other stuff. So it's the X's and O's part. I don't think he gets enough credit for being as good of a football mind, certainly an offensive mind, as he probably should have because of all the other stuff.
Well, look, with that abrasive personality, he's still getting all these coaching jobs, plum coaching jobs. Ole Miss is a great job, and he could probably find another one at a similar level if he decided to look around. Now, when they jump back to the part about why nobody likes him, why, in fact, is Lane Kiffin so disliked?
Well, he isn't really given much of a reason to. I mean, going all the way back to when he was the backup quarterback at Fresno State with the 90s goatee, in his words, that was a very punchable face, right? So it's, even going back to it's a great story, by the way, that he tells about. He thought he was going to have a chance to get some reps, and then some freshman named David Carr showed up, and literally in practice, he left the field and came back with a clipboard and became a volunteer assistant coach in the middle of practice because he was like, I can't beat this guy. And so, but I think that if you're if your perspective on Lane Kiffin is the inexplicable 1 hour press conference tirade that we heard from Al Davis, or if, I'm a Tennessee alum, right? My wife is so mad at me for doing this because everyone, born and raised in Knoxville, right? All my college roommates are, he is not giving those people any reason to like him. But I think that his honesty about how he handled and mishandled things that he gets into a lot of detail about in the documentary. And then when you see where he is now, he very openly said he thought Oxford was going to be too slow for him. And this is a bridge to another job. I think he's dug in. I think he's going to stay there as long as they're going to let him. The line he keeps going back to is, I needed Oxford more than Oxford needed me. And I think that you can see his change. Yeah, but no one in Knoxville, I can tell you firsthand, is going to suddenly, go buy a bunch of Lane Kiffin stuff.
Yeah. That's Ryan McGee, and he's got the E60 tonight, 7 o'clock on ESPN, The Many Lives of Lane Kiffin. We're going to get to Orioles preview, talk to Ben McDonald in just a few minutes. If you did not hear this yesterday, Major League Baseball is going to implement the robo-umpiring for next year. There will still be umpires calling balls and strikes, but hitters, pitchers, and catchers will be allowed to trigger the system by tapping their head for a challenge. Like if a hitter doesn't like a strike call, he can tap his helmet. They check it quickly. They get it done in 10 seconds. The umpire gets word in his ear. No, it was a ball. You called that a strike or whatever it is, and it will be overturned. It's called ABS technology. And it's very similar to what they have in tennis. Totally changed tennis. You can't have a John McEnroe today because they can check this. 12 cameras in each park tracking the ball with a margin of error around 1/6 of an inch. So that should be precise enough. Teams that run out of challenges, and they have 2, over the first 9 innings will be granted an extra challenge in the 10th inning, while those that are still unused will simply carry into the extra. So if you haven't challenged, you could have as many as 3 going into the 10th. If a team runs out of challenges in the 10th, it will automatically receive another one in the 11th, a rule that extends for an extra inning. This is something whose time has come. They have tested it in the minor leagues. They tested it in spring training this year. And, look, they find with the tracking of this, Major League umpires get it right about 94% of the time. So you're not looking at that many pitches. The technology is there to move it along quickly. It's not like, reviewing a play in the NFL where it's supposed to be 90 seconds and seemingly can go on for like 6 or 7 minutes. And this is absolutely the right thing to do. Even the baseball purists are saying, it's about time for this. So 2 challenges a game. It's been tested in the minor leagues. They're going to have it in Major League Baseball next year. And, it's a long way in the rearview mirror. But remember the carping that came out about the pitch clock? Can you imagine a game now without the pitch clock? Can you imagine the days of I remember these days of 3-hour and 40-minute games for 9-inning baseball and World Series games that would easily go 4 hours plus. It's just too much. And a year from now, we'll look back and say, man, how did we ever live without the robo-umpiring? Makes total sense. Works just fine. Coming up, Orioles preview. We'll hear from Ben McDonald and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.